Welcome to Stirring Strength, Perspectives on Mental Health and Addiction. I'm your host, Dean Anderson, and on today's show, we have Mitch Van Kannel. Now, Mitch is the executive director of Sorry Comedy Festival and a comedian. And Mitch VK is your stage name. You were just telling me that was kind of thrust upon you, but welcome to the show, Mitch.
Hey, thanks for having me in your beautiful home. It's great.
Isn't it awesome?
Yeah,
right? Yeah, the bathroom's down the hall to the left, and there's a living room around the corner, I promise.
Right on. I'll try not to go through the medicine cabinet.
Don't do that. At Sorry Comedy Festival, you're a comedian. You're what are your titles? I know that you're an executive director, but I know there's so much more. So you do production and you do a bunch of different things, correct?
Yeah, I'm a man of many hats. So I was onboarded because I have a background in marketing. So I started as a marketing director, and I was also a comic. So then, we were using what I know about comedy to help produce, and then slowly that went into booking, and now I'm the executive director. It's a very ragtag bunch.
I saw you stand up years ago, but you were doing some of your, prior to Sorry Comedy Festival, doing setting up gigs and setting up, I don't know, what is that? Is it gigs? Is it?
Yeah, gigs.
Show creation, right? That sort of thing. So you've been doing this for a little while, not just stumbled across it with Sorry, correct?
Yeah. I've been, the first time I did comedy, the first time I stepped on stage was 7 years ago, but I've been a touring headliner for 2 years now. So I just got back from Alberta. We're going out east next month. So I've been coast to coast a couple times now, and it's been quite a journey.
Cool.
It's definitely a busy schedule.
Cool. What does it mean to be a touring headliner?
It means I go last on the show. I do the most time on the show, and I'm working in all different markets. So for the first little bit, a lot of comics are just working in the city they started in. But you start to see this broader perspective of what people laugh at in different markets, and it can be different. So my end goal, and most people's end goal, is to record a body of work, and to really tighten those jokes up, you got to make sure they work in Alberta and in Newfoundland.
Oh, is there a name for that? Is it the tight 20? Oh no, tight 10?
Yeah, a lot of people say a tight 5 when you're starting. That's when you should start actually asking for paid work, is when you have 5 minutes that really works. And then, that goes up to a tight 10, then a tight 50, and then eventually, 30, Netflix. 40 minutes. Yeah.
The end goal, right?
Yeah.
I really appreciate the work that you do, and I'm a big fan of comedy. I think that it's underutilized, and there's a lot more to it. So before we go any further, I want to get into that and talk about understanding the comedy realm and what that all does. But I wanted to elaborate on what the Sorry Comedy Festival is, and let the people at home know what that is. So we talk about the executive director of the comedy festival, and then we skip right past it.
Right. So the Sorry Comedy Festival is a festival that takes place in London. It started as the London Comedy Festival, and it went through a rebrand because we wanted to make it a national destination. So we put a lot of work in getting very large headliners in. Last year we had Tom Green and Dimitri Martin and Jet Ski Johnson and Rory Scovel, and the festival at a core is, a destination for comedy fans, but also a hub for comics. And one of the most important through lines of that is the national comic search. So last year we operated in 7 different markets. We had over 800 comics apply, and they did this local contest, an 8-week contest in their local market. The top comic from Calgary, Alberta, Halifax, Hamilton, Toronto, they all came down and they duked it out here for one champion. And it's a really cool way to source new young talent. I think the comedy industry has, had their guards for a long time, and the same people are getting the same things. And Sorry really shakes that up and gives a lot of opportunity to comics who otherwise weren't getting it.
So by guards, you mean there's specific producers or people that kind of keep it in their own pocket or in their own backyard?
Yeah.
So it's not open?
Yeah, the industry guards. In Canada, there's a couple big players, JFL and Sirius XM and Rogers TV. And we can shake that up by being new guys that are kind of finding people in different corners of the country.
Oh, cool. Cool. And so bringing a hub to London, Ontario, and creating a more travel destination and helping tourism and all the things that go on in London to help build London. Why London?
I guess because that's where we live. So we do there is an element of
Because I'm here.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of putting lipstick on your backyard, I guess. But we're trying to make it a pop-in destination. There are a lot of fantastic comics here, and there are a lot of successful Canadian comics that started here.
Yeah.
Jeff Leeson and Jason Allen and Abbas Wahab and a lot of these comics who are living in the States now or have different specials and huge followings. They started here, and the scene is great. And for some reason, comedy culture happens here. Many people have told me the Poacher's Arms open mic is the longest running open mic in the country for whatever reason. Wow. It's a Monday night free show. 80 people are coming. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But it's happening.
Yeah. I noticed that, and I heard it through, just through conversations over the years that, London was on the rise for the comedy piece, and it's always kind of, even since Second City, there used to be Second City, and that was a big part of it, and it used to kind of be a feeder for Toronto kind of thing. But I heard that London actually has a larger, per capita comedy scene than most towns. Is this true? Do you know?
Yeah, I think so. So, a lot of people move to a big city so they can do multiple sets in a night and really work on their act.
Yeah.
And sometimes in London, I'm doing 3 sets in a night.
Wow.
You can't. In Toronto, it doesn't get much higher. In New York, you'll hit 5, 6, but in Canada, the per capita number of shows you can do is quite high.
Wow. Okay. So much more to that. So I want to talk about the comedy scene and a little bit more about the comics in general, like the type of people that you're meeting and interacting with. And I know that you're right in the mix of it. You're rubbing elbows because part of creation and all that. Is there a certain type of person that is a stand-up comedian or does that type of work?
Yeah, it's a lot of broken toys for sure. But there are different, like any career, I guess there are different levels. So at the open mic level, it's free and open for anyone to sign up. Yeah. And you get all different walks of life there. And with that comes some interesting stories. There'll be a comic who shows up like a superhero and punches an audience member in the face, and then you have to deal with that.
Wow.
But then once people start getting paid work, everyone's a little more respectful of the craft and treating it like a job. And you kind of clock in and you're a little more responsible, I would say. They're still drinking on the job. But,
yeah. So broken toys. So for everybody at home, this is people that are struggling with mental health, struggling with social norms, struggling with physical health. What do you mean by broken toys?
Yeah, I think everyone has a really interesting story, and the longer you're around, you start to notice that every comic has, my tour, for example, we often joke that it's the sick dads tour is what we unofficially call it, because we all had very sick fathers growing up that affected us in different ways. Okay. And so there's a lot of history there. I think you need to learn to get funny when things are happening in your life, and then you can harness that and turn it into a career.
Yeah. The defense mechanism of humor is huge. And it gets used a lot. I'm great at it, all right? And that's why I learned to do what I do, because I can crack a joke and make light of certain situations and get myself out of trouble. So it makes sense that people that are using humor in a bigger way often have some sort of maybe traumatic background or something that led them to use that as a tool to get by. So now they're just really good at it, right? Makes perfect sense. You look at some of the big names. And then also there's usually mental health attached to it. You can see it. Robin Williams is probably one of the bigger ones that pops up right out of the hop, right? So you can see that those are true. In London, they were a little while ago, and it was an anecdotal study that they did that said London was the saddest town in Canada or whatever it was.
Right.
Right? Do you think there's a correlation there between our comedy growth and?
Totally. I bet you they're exactly related.
Yeah.
And probably in more ways than one. And maybe the comics need, you know, a way to show their feelings and emotions. But then also if the audiences are sad, then they're coming out more, and that's why we're able to do more sets in a night than they can in Guelph or something.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's a therapeutic piece to the person getting up on stage? Like somebody gets up on stage and they're doing a little bit of therapy with the audience?
You know, a lot of people like to say that, and a lot of people like to do that. I think ultimately, you know, you can't go up and say, tell a room full of strangers that you're going through a divorce. And they're not going to, you know, crowd surf you off stage.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it has to be funny first.
Yeah.
What I do think happens is it's a rush. There's a wave of endorphins, and you feel incredible.
Yeah.
One of my friends, Andrew Barr, he did a comedy special where he ran 100K on a treadmill on stage and then recorded the special. And the whole premise was that feeling of when you're sick or not feeling well, and then you perform and it kind of all goes away because of endorphins. He wanted to push that theory to the max.
Oh.
And so he put his body through incredible stress and then performed an hour of comedy.
And what's the, you know, did he prove his point?
You know,
or did he barf on this?
It's no, he didn't
prove something.
He didn't barf. I heard the night went fantastic. It's not out yet, but yeah, I heard it was an awesome show.
Fascinating. I'm so interested in all of that. I know from myself and my own experiences and some of the things I've done on stage that you're not wrong. When you get up there and you hit that laugh or you get that engagement or somebody really, like, there's no feeling like it. Like it is a level of acceptance and a belonging that, you know, that a lot of people can't get just, you know, getting on the bus and everybody goes, standing ovation for tapping the pass, right? Right. So there's certainly more to that. And I think that's certainly valuable for the participant, the person being on stage. Does any of that ring true with you, Mitch? Can I ask personally? Like, do you have a sensation or a feeling that, you know, for yourself personally, what got you into doing this work?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot in my life, and I have a couple different theories. The easiest one that I can attach to is I was born 3 months premature, so I was the smallest guy in the class always. So to avoid getting thrown in a locker, you got to talk your way out of it.
Sure.
And so, you know, if you can make the bullies laugh, then you're good.
Yeah.
And then, you know, there's deeper things that perhaps because my dad was sick, that maybe as a coping tool, I made jokes and stuff. But the one thing I can really relate to is I was always goofing around, because if I couldn't be the strongest or fastest, I had to be the funniest.
Okay. And how does that play out in the rest of, like, in this, as a class clown myself, I know that doesn't always play out in the rest of the world, you know, the work and the fitting into society and societal norms, right? So you can be funny, but that doesn't always play out, right?
Yeah. So that's why you find a job where you can tell jokes, I guess, permanently. But I try and really keep business and joking as separate as possible. So when I'm doing stuff for Sorry, you know, on a call, if some other people are joking around, I'm pretty like, I'm the buzzkill. Like, they're like, oh, Mitch, there's no fun at all, but we're here to get a job done, and let's bang it out. But then after is when I'm goofing around.
Oh, okay. So you compartmentalize. You separate.
Yeah, I guess so.
Separate those things and make, you know, determine what's important, what's not. I think that's important to know for a lot of people, because there's an assumption you're a comedian, so therefore everything's a joke, which, you know, it's the same as me. I'm a counselor, and everybody all of a sudden they want to dump their stuff on you. It's like, whoa, like, I'm having dinner here. So I could see where people would want to have humor and use that as a tool to leverage that. But I think that as humor is such an important tool to healing and connection, that sometimes it gets lost in having a value or importance in everyday life, and then we kind of say it's one or the other. And you can't, like, in my field or in the mental health field, often everybody's really afraid to crack a joke or to say anything, because we're worried that has to be compartmentalized. And there's like, no, there's a part here where we can laugh, or they're worried that they're gonna hurt somebody or hurt somebody's feelings or do something inappropriate that would make it so that they're, you know, not taken seriously anymore. So that was something I wanted to talk to you about today, about, you know, understanding the value of humor and how it kind of plays a role in day to day. And sorry, you guys have a rating system of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And I'm curious about, how do we determine these lines of appropriateness?
Yeah, that's a great question. And they are very abstract lines. So
Yeah.
you're right. In the Sorry Fest, we have kind of the incredibly sorry tier, the 4 exclamation marks. That's like, this is going to be very vulgar.
So just hold on to your pants.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the 1 exclamation mark, which is the clean tier, and everything in between. And last year we did 1 clean show, and the comics were incredibly nervous for it. And they really pulled back. And the feedback we got after the show, well, first of all, we thought when we marketed a clean show, it would attract, people who preferred clean comedy, maybe they were, more conservative or religious or whatever reason.
Sure.
What it actually attracted was parents who wanted to bring their 13 to 16-year-old child to a show for their first comedy show.
Oh.
And so every table had a teenager at it, at least one. And so that made the comics quite nervous. What ended up happening at the end was every parent coming up and being like, my kid's not a nerd. You could have went a little harder. And that was, you cleaned it up so much that there's things on TV that are a little more vulgar, I guess, than what they were saying. They were doing jelly bean jokes. So that line is different for everyone. Now, also I can see someone who went to the 2-tier show and then maybe they got offended off something that maybe wasn't. So it is very abstract and it's difficult to navigate. I think there has to be this kind of unwritten contract that you don't have to laugh at it, but because you bought a ticket, we have to come to an agreement here that something might push a button.
Yeah, I think it's probably the hardest part when I look at what you guys are doing. And I know there's all these other hard parts, but that gradient of understanding offensive and what's not offensive, and then putting a rating system on it so that people can participate, but it being arbitrary as well. And like, where does one line end and the other begin? But then when I think about humor, almost all of it is surprise, right? It's like, here, I'm walking down a path, and then I flip it, and then you go, oh, and you go, I was surprised. Right. And now whether that was, shocking or vulgar or whatever, I laugh at the weirdest things because it's more about me being surprised than it is about, the content of necessarily what it is.
Yeah.
And so when you're actually paying for a ticket to be surprised, and then you're not surprised, right? And it's like, how much do I want to surprise you?
Yeah.
And it's like, you surprised me too much, damn it. Right? That's a hard sell.
Totally.
Line to go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And just because you were surprised doesn't mean you agree with the statement.
Yeah. Right. So you were saying, I wish that there was an invisible agreement kind of thing. Is there a thing? Is there something that we can do as a society to get everybody to relax a little bit and have an agreement to participate?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think on the audience's end, if they know that they bought a ticket to a comedy show, some things might be said. I think on the comics end, they can't stand by that joke, because at the end of the day, your job is to make the room laugh. If it didn't work, don't go say it again tomorrow night.
Yeah.
You have to do well. Not just say whatever thoughts you have. So the comic should, evolve that material. And even if oftentimes it does work and then it doesn't one night, don't get mad at the crowd. Don't turn on the crowd and yell at them or call out someone who's not laughing. Just keep it rolling. They didn't like that one. You should have another 60 jokes. Tell the next one.
Yeah. I don't think we think much about the symbiotic relationship between the audience and the performer. We just see it as the performer doing something for the audience, but it goes both ways. It's the audience is feeding off of the person is feeding off the audience.
Totally.
Vice versa.
The best shows are one. We are one organism together. Everyone's contributing, and contributing doesn't mean heckling, but laughing and having a good time and feeding off energies. Yeah. There's a couple of people who host comedy shows who sometimes they'll say, the more you give, the more you'll get, which is kind of I think it's a little cheap, but in principle, it makes sense. The harder you laugh, then the harder the comic will go, the more energy they'll give, and it just bounces off each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I think that's fascinating. And then I think that there's also a part where that relationship between the comic and the audience can also become also toxic. Like I've seen crowd work that turns into making fun of, or people going to a comedy show and being afraid to sit in the front row because they're worried what the comedian will say about them, and they kind of hide in the back corners, right? That process is something that people are afraid of, quite honestly. Any thoughts around that? Any thoughts around how that, what that looks like for the audience and or the performer?
Yeah. So I've worked the door for a lot of my shows. A lot of our shows are in comedy clubs, but a lot are independent rooms where we have to check the tickets and then go on stage. Yeah. And across the board, the front row is sat last. No one wants to sit there. It's the people who came late that end up at the front row.
So they deserve to be made fun of.
And they're always trying to, yeah, that's who we go for. You hold up the show. No, but we always say, the guy I tour with, Doug, he always has a good line that he's like, it's not that kind of show. We make fun of ourselves, not you. And we really try and make everyone feel comfortable, because ultimately they paid tickets for a night out, so they shouldn't be made fun of. Now, good crowd work, you ask questions and you can make things with the answers. It's improv, right? So you shouldn't be like, look at this guy, he looks like an idiot. It should be, what do you do for work? What's your background? And with the things, you build the joke.
So that's the premise behind it, but people get the wrong idea what that means. And most of the time, whenever I see like recordings of crowd work, you don't even know who the person is. You just hear some random thing. They go, I'm this. And then they just talk about that thing. And it's not necessarily like pulling up on stage and say, this is Steve from Albuquerque and he lives at 222. and getting into that in depth. We're not picking people apart. I see now that into working in the mental health world myself, that trauma is a huge thing. And there's a lot of concern and worry around, people having a traumatic experience or what they're doing, what they're participating in, bringing something up. So I think people are worried that maybe sitting in the front row may, create some anxiety or fear or worry that they won't be able to handle or get through. So that's is that a thing that you have to worry about while you're dealing with, live audiences and comedy, about, being the buzzword now is trauma informed, and being aware of how you do that? Is there any consideration when you're doing those things?
So I guess there's two hats. There's me as a comic and me as a producer.
Cool.
I do a lot of crowd work, and I really make it an effort to make everyone feel comfortable.
Sure.
I'm not perfect. Once in a while I might cross a line, but for the most part, it's going to be funny. It's going to be safe. When I'm putting on a show, I will watch the whole show. And if any comic on stage is crossing a line, I'll give them the light early and get them off there.
Okay.
Because it damages the show. It damages the reputation of the show.
Yeah, that's really, it can be harming to all people. And I think that's that fine line that comedy has to walk to do that, right? Now, and in the same breath, I want to talk about that stuff because I don't want it to get lost, and I don't want to make it that it's all scary and people need to worry. It's the opposite. It's, the connection to the crowd, the participating in something bigger, being part of that bigger unit of we're all kind of in on the same joke and laughing. And then laughter being the best medicine is, the old cliche. What do you think about that? What do you think about the laughter being medicine or healing?
Yeah, I think it's amongst one of the best medicines. Penicillin's pretty good too, but
yeah, that's all right.
But no, but I think it is. I've gotten so many messages after shows of people saying, "Thank you. You don't know how much I needed that. I'm going through X, Y, Z, and I needed a night out, and that was fantastic." And that's a very special thing, to provide that. So I even think sometimes like, a lot of people that come out is a date night. And sometimes I'm like, if this date goes well, you're kind of hooking up based on my personality.
You're getting lucky because of me. You're welcome.
Yeah.
All right. That's not gonna feel good. I think that when I'm looking at my own life in the day to day, a big part of it is we're often just too damn serious about everything. Like there's this is always this bill, and there's always that thing you got to do, and you got to be here, and you got to make sure that the price of gas is $2, and you're like, there's just this constant state of being. And I think that when we get those moments of laughter, it's just like like the world kind of fades away for a minute, and that release is critical and important, right? Any suggestions on how, the viewers at home would find more of that, or any suggestions that you have for finding more humor in life?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, the comedy is 1,000 times better live.
Yeah.
You could check out a comic on YouTube or a Netflix special or whatever.
Right.
When you're in the room, it is a living, breathing thing, and there's nothing like it. So support live comedy is where I would start. But I don't know, finding humor and joy in a lot of things. A lot of comics that I know that have been through, traumatic situations, they try and write a joke about it pretty soon after some of those things happen, just to, get the different perspectives and try and keep it light. And I mean, that's not to say run from your problems into a joke book, but there's definitely value in that.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think that there's certainly something to that, and there's ways that it can be done in an unhealthy way in avoidance, but there's also lots of evidence out there that say that facing and looking at and creating a different emotional attachment to events that have happened in your life can be very helpful, not in an avoidance way, but really empowering in that whole sense. And I'm with you. The live comedy it's like watching a magic trick on TV. It's like a big deal.
Yeah.
But if your buddy all of a sudden comes and, pulls a rabbit out of his inside pocket, you're like, whoa, that's cool. And the comedy's the same way, to be part of and to be able to see and then be led along. And, as humans, we're hardwired for storytelling and circle time and all that stuff. And that's kind of the same thing. So it can be really rewarding, right? Any last things, or just as we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to share about the festival that's coming up with the people at home?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Sorry Comedy Festival takes place every November. We try and do a really good job of bringing in different tiers of comedy, and with that comes different price points. So there's large theater shows at Centennial Hall where you can see big acts. Like last year we had Tom Green and Dimitri Martin. We have our spotlight shows were a little bit cheaper and they're more emerging talent. And then some of my favorite are the club shows, which is a showcase style, $25. You get to see 8 comics do 10-minute sets. There's great variety. So if you're not into this type of humor, then 9 minutes later, you'll get someone else and it'll be fabulous. And then we try and really make it special, with different moments. Last year we had major headliners dropping into club shows to surprise the audience.
Wow.
Things of that nature. One of my favorite moments of the year last year was actually a comic named Andrew Packard did a live therapy show that he taped and he put on YouTube, and his dad's a therapist, he's a comic. Different guest comics come in, the audience sent in their problems. You get real therapy advice and you get comedic therapy advice. And it was really quite a special show.
That's awesome.
And I got to be on the show as a comic, and it's one of the most interesting laughs you ever get, because when the therapist gets talking, he's great, and it's very tense. Everyone's dialed into what he's saying because he's giving fantastic advice. You could hear a pin drop, a sold out theater, and you could hear a pin drop. And then as a comic, you get to chime in and be like, or you could just leave her. And it's the biggest laugh you ever got, because
it's the flip.
Yeah,
the flip we're talking about, the shock. Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show, Mitch. Congratulations on the work you do, and I look forward to Comedy Festival coming this year. Thanks again. Thank you for watching Stirring Strength, and we'll see you next time.